All right, everyone, you know Mr. Sweater Vest, Mr. Pro Free Speech, with some exceptions, Ben Shapiro, that I've warned about for years in the same vein that I have Ann Coulter. It's like when I noticed that Ann Coulter was a very flighty individual, it's like, oh, MAGA, oh, Trump 100%, and then, he does something that seemingly doesn't correspond to what she wants, and all of a sudden she just flips out. Ben Shapiro is kind of similar. Like he was never happier, I think, when Trump, struck that Syrian air base that one time, and then he was like, oh, Trump is the reincarnated Messiah, and then all of a sudden he was evil again because Orange Man bad. Orange Man doesn't want to start several wars, so he's a bad person. Well, I didn't know this, but someone, I don't know whether it was Cassandra Fairbanks digging around or who it was, somebody dug back into his tweet history, back to we're talking 2011, 2012, during that election. And he's got so many fucking tweets about Ron Paul, obsessively whining about how he's an anti-Semite and how I guess one of the lines, an archive link in the description of one of these tweets, but there are 1,000 others, is like, well, Newt Gingrich almost drops his pen, Ron Paul grabs it and wrings it like the neck of a Jew, and weird shit like this, insinuating that Ron Paul is a virulently hateful individual. I'm thinking to myself, this is the same Ben Shapiro that pretends to be quasi-libertarian, very free speech, liberty-centric, old school. I'm a real conservative. I'm sort of hip to the lingo too because I'm not that old yet. He's, I think, my age. And it's wrong. It's like, here's some opportunism for you at this particular juncture. Shapiro gets away with it, with his blatant opportunism, mainly because he's very high functioning. That is, he's a wordsmith, number one. He's good at rhetoric. He's good at debating. And number two, he's very intelligent. So I think doesn't he already have a law degree and he graduated early and crazy shit like that? Academically speaking, very adept individual. That doesn't mean that his worldview is coherent. When you're saying that Ron Paul is an anti-Semite, I would challenge him to find any example of Ron Paul actually acting in a hateful manner towards any person. Because Ron Paul is like the Bernie Sanders of the right wing. He's very, very consistent. You can think he's kooky. And some of his views, are a little bit more out there. Oh, let's return to the gold standard. Fuck the idea of backing the economy by the economy itself and having the currency be an evaluation of a small proportion of that economic output. We're going to base it on how much of this particular metal we own instead. I disagree with the summation that that would be a good idea. Some things to be said for it. There are some things definitely to be said against it. We could debate about it for 1,000 years. But the idea of absolute free speech is a good one. It's purely, strictly American. You can't possibly construe absolutist free speechism with being anti-American. You can't. You can make all sorts of roundabout arguments. Well, our founders never would have liked these evil, hateful people. Well, okay, you're totally wrong. You don't know anything about U.S. history. You also don't understand the philosophical underpinning of the Constitution. Ron Paul, very pro-gun. And I mean, willing to call out the GOP. And he's one of the few people that's ever been willing to do this. I will. Ron Paul will. Ben Shapiro, I don't think, does. Which is that the GOP should be arguing for the recension of existing gun control. It's not a conservative view to say, oh, well, we gave ground for a century and said, okay, we'll give up the machine guns, we'll give up the suppressors, we'll give up the expanded magazine, we'll give up the bump stock, we'll give up this, that, and the other thing, but we're still conservatives. No more giving up anything, we've given up enough. No, you should be taking it back. You should be fighting back against the actual left on guns, but that hasn't been done. What about privacy? Well, the right's pretty much rolled over and played dead on that in the Bush era. The Bush era saw the conservatives say, well, we need to spy on people KGB style, otherwise the terrorists will win. And Shapiro, I think he's, at least somewhat on board with that, and mainly. He doesn't really, he's definitely not an American firster. That's just the point. It's funny how that has become, in the parlance of some never-Trumpers' minds, a bad thing. The radical idea that the U.S. government should primarily care about U.S. citizens, that the taxpayers here, people who are paying money to keep that engine working, have the right to benefit off that engine. I would think that that would be, at the very least, an extension of the philosophy behind free markets injected into the centrality that we unfortunately have to deal with. Ben Shapiro, I think, disagrees with that. He thinks that there are other players in the world that we have to mindlessly support regardless of their particular views at the time. Oh my God, if we rescind foreign aid, the whole world will collapse. No, it won't. The world did just fine before the US started bailing everyone out. The US realized that if we had a wealthy, powerful economy, we could just throw money at our problems and usually they would go away. Well, the problem is that more problems would occur because people realized we were willing to do that. It's just like the idea of negotiating with terrorists, and I know Ronald Reagan unfortunately never carried this over into the fiscal arena. You don't negotiate with terrorists, because once they see you're willing to give them money, or give them land or something, they'll do more. They'll hijack more planes. They'll take more people hostage. Why is it that we've never come around to the understanding that the same is true of economics? When you're willing to give people a bunch of free money for nothing, a bunch of welfare handouts or handouts to a foreign state, it creates more problems. It's funny because then these same conservatives say, well, I don't hate the poor. I just want to cut off the welfare cycle because it'll create more poverty. Absolutely it will. But you're just a sellout because you're not willing to apply that to foreign states. Why is it that they are exempt from the same philosophical concept as people who are poor here, who you should favor over foreign states, I would argue? I'd much rather give that money to the poor and downtrodden in the U.S. than send it off to some other foreign state. There's a certain foreign state that Ben Shapiro cares about more than the others, possibly because of its nuclear stockpile. Who fucking cares, though? We're in debt. Why are we giving money to anybody? Doesn't make any sense, really. Billions and billions of dollars a year that nobody here ever willed to go to a foreign state. Shapiro is repeating the same lies about Ron Paul that people on the left did at the time. I ended up voting for Ron Paul in 2012. I wrote him in because of Obama didn't fulfill his promises. Gitmo is still open. The wars were still raging, censorship didn't stop, surveillance didn't stop, the press was still being trodden on. The economy certainly wasn't that much better than it was in 2008, so I said, fuck it, why should I back him? Then I looked at Mitt Romney, and if I closed my eyes and ignored the accent, the things he was saying sounded like what Obama was saying anyway. Obamacare, oh yeah, big problem. Romneycare, oh wonderful, yeah, okay. He literally adapted it from your healthcare plan in Massachusetts. Let's just vote for you so you can change absolutely nothing because I'm just a masochist. I'm just another fucking moron. Let me vote for Mitt Romney. No. I bet Ben Shapiro voted for Mitt Romney, though. Bet he had no problem with that because all these neocons are willing to go through the yearly ritual of saying how much money they're going to dispense to foreign states to make us more friends around the world that'll stab us in the back constantly. So Ben Shapiro rambles about how evil and dangerous Ron Paul is. Ron Paul never expressed violent tendencies, is strictly anti-war, anti-intervention, pro-free speech, pro-freedom to defend yourself. I think it's got the most American fucking platform of the modern age you could possibly cobble together. More of a libertarian, hysterically enough, than the LP's candidate Gary Johnson in the last election. Hell, Ron Paul probably should have just switched, said, okay, I'm in the LP now. They probably wouldn't have let him in because he would have run roughshod over him by being the most popular person in politics. Maybe they're afraid of winning. Maybe the LP is doing what the neocons have done over and over again. They're actually terrified to be on top. They'd rather be the underdog so that they can mindlessly whine and be a fucking bunch of losers. So Ben Shapiro's, here's more evidence. I didn't even know these tweets existed. More evidence that Ben Shapiro is exactly what I've been telling people. He's not what he appears to be. He loves that income, though. Guarantee that. And the fact is that a lot of people are afraid to debate him because he's rhetorically skilled. So he basically just sort of skates by. He never gets called out on the bullshit except by some Twitter handles. Oh, he doesn't really care about that. He's got however many millions of fans. He's got his podcast and shit. More power to him, by the way, for making a living, but, have a coherent worldview. If you think Ron Paul is anti-Semitic because the Democrats tarred him as anti-Semitic, how is that any different from giving in to the lynch mob today of this person bad, this person expressed views we declare to be racially supremacist? Well, it could be that they're the most cosmopolitan liberal person ever, and you're taking a quote out of context. I guess Ben will believe it. It's amazing how somebody as high-functioning as Ben Shapiro can believe the bullshit, or at least pretend to, maybe for more intelligent reasons. That's about all. Peace out.